Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of the Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 30th of August. So coming to the first article on dilution, bifurcation and special status, as well as law and opinion. Or basically both these articles have the same context and the same premise, which is with regards to the changes that have been brought about in Jammu and Kashmir. The similar idea that has been discussed here in the context of Jammu and Kashmir is that what is the legality of these decisions and these changes that the government has brought about, and also these changes are what are going to be examined by the Supreme Court. So in that particular context also this article is what is relevant. So that is how you have to particularly view this particular article. So coming to the analysis, first and foremost, coming to the first issue which is important is with regards to the dilution of Article 370. Basically, I have discussed this in very much in detail when I have discussed a separate video on Jammu and Kashmir. So just briefly, we all know that this is what is being called as unconstitutional, primarily because it is the Constituent Assembly which was to decide whether or not what was to be done with Article 370, but the government has replaced the idea of Constituent Assembly with a Legislative Assembly. I had told you even then that there is a difference between Constituent Assembly and Legislative Assembly, where the Constituent Assembly has a supreme status as compared to the Legislative Assembly. And even if this is what is accepted for momentarily, that Legislative Assembly is what is equated with Constituent Assembly, even in that scenario Jammu and Kashmir did not have a Legislative Assembly at the time of these changes, and it was under President's rule, and that is why on behalf of the Legislative Assembly it is the governor who has taken the decision. So that is the first legal aspect which has been discussed. The second aspect that is important here, which I also found is a key idea, is the doctrine of harmonious constitution. Very important concept. These kind of technical concepts, UPSC are UPSC favorites. UPSC has asked about these kind of concepts in the past, and it can repeat such kind of a question. Now basically what the doctrine of harmonious constitution means is that there might be two different provisions in the constitution and both of them might be antagonistic to each other. For example, there is a provision of equality in the constitution, and similarly there is a provision of welfare of the weaker sections or the discriminated sections in the society. So when these two ideas in the constitution are simultaneously existing, which prima facie appear to be contradictory to each other, in such a scenario it cannot happen that at the cost of one particular idea the other idea is completely negated. That cannot happen. Rather, both these ideas have to be taken up in a manner where they are collectively used in a harmonious manner, and that is what is the doctrine of harmonious constitution. Now basically, in this particular context, what had happened is that some ideas of Article 370 were what were going against the other provisions of the Constitution, and that is why those provisions are what the government has used in its benefit. Even within the Article 370, you should note that there are several clauses, and the government has just used one clause of Article 370 to negate or dilute the other aspects of the other clauses of Article 370, and that is what is being a hindrance to the doctrine of harmonious constitution. So this is again something that the Supreme Court will now be examining. You should primarily you should know that now the Supreme Court has formed a constitutional bench to examine all the cases that have been filed in the Supreme Court in the context of Jammu and Kashmir. That is what is important. Another thing that is important is the question of federalism. We have discussed this also in the previous video. Now basically this Article 3 that has been used to bifurcate Jammu and Kashmir has a condition that before any such kind of a change with the territories or the boundaries of a state, a notice is what has to be given to the state legislative assembly. Clearly that is something that the government has not done in this particular case, and this is what is impacting the federal structure. It is almost like the central government has acted in an authoritative manner and not giving regard to the rights of the states which it was entitled to. No matter any state in India, it has a right to know beforehand that such kind of a provision is what is there in the pipeline. So that is what is a threat to federalism, and federalism is amongst the basic structure of the constitution. So could the government have tinkered with federalism is another question that is going to be analyzed here. So this is important. Another thing here which has been discussed is with regards to the President rule itself. Now this is again something that is important, that under Article 356 Jammu and Kashmir was under President's rule, but This again is something that can be subjected to the Supreme Court. That was the President rule extended in Jammu and Kashmir with a malified intention of dividing Jammu and Kashmir. All of these questions are what can be subject to judicial scrutiny, and that this is something that is going to be looked upon. So that is one thing that is important. Another thing that is very, very important, and that is again a key phrase, is the idea of colorable legislation. Now basically what happens here is that sometimes when the government cannot do something directly, it tries to do the same thing indirectly. Now how it does that is, suppose in this particular case the government was not able to directly change Article 370, so it has in a very, very indirect manner, in very, very incipient manner brought about these kind of changes by tinkering with the constitution provisions or some areas which are grey in the constitution. The government has used it for its advantage, and this previously the Supreme Court has said that this is what is always going to be ultra wise, it is going to be unacceptable. So this is what is smacking of a colorable legislation. For example, I'll just give you a hypothetical example, that if suppose the government wants to take away the right of universal franchise from people of the age say 18 to 21, and the government cannot make a law directly in this regard, but the government comes up with another law that these people will not be issued a voter card, or for that matter any document which is required for them to vote is what is withdrawn from them. So if this kind of a legislation is passed, and that kind of a legislation becomes a colorable legislation, because the government directly couldn't do it, but it is doing it indirectly. So this is again something that is important. Another important analysis that has been offered in the editorial is with regards to the impact that this is going to have on Jammu and Kashmir. Now basically the editorial is giving us some facts and figures. It is saying that already this particular article was what was very much diluted in Jammu and Kashmir, and so not much of a difference is what is going to happen in Jammu and Kashmir. It is primarily being said that a lot of articles of the union list were already implemented in Jammu and Kashmir. A total of 94 out of 97 items in the union list had already been applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. Also, out of the 395 articles in the Indian Constitution, 260 articles were already something that was extended to Jammu and Kashmir. And that is why it is not something that is going to result in major changes in Jammu and Kashmir. It is being wrongly presented in the media that this is what is doomsday for Jammu and Kashmir. That is not the case. But there is another case in this regard, that if the government had already diluted Article 370 so much, then what was the need to further dilute it so much, further divide the particular state? These kind of questions are what are being raised, and we had discussed this in the previous video on Jammu and Kashmir. So from that perspective also this is important. Another thing that I have found new and which I have not mentioned about is the ADM Jabalpur case. Now basically this was the case that took place during the emergency era. What happened then was that even the basic rights of the citizen, that is the right to life, what was not upheld by the Supreme Court when emergency was what was imposed. At that point of time, this case is what had come to the Supreme Court, and in this particular case on habeas corpus, the Supreme Court had said that the government has very much all the rights over the citizens during emergency, and this case is one considered as a dark chapter in the history of judiciary. Till date, judiciary has accepted that this is one of the worst judgments that was given by the judiciary. It was completely biased in the favor of the government and not upholding the rights of the citizens. Now this case is again very much in news, primarily because the judiciary is again being accused for doing something similar. You should know that several politicians are not being allowed to interact with the media, and writs of habeas corpus are being issued or are being filed in the Supreme Court to know about the whereabouts of all of these leaders. So in that particular context also, this case is what is becoming important. Now this is again, I have told you a number of times, Jammu and Kashmir is one of the most important topics for this year's main, so you have to prepare it from that particular perspective. These ideas of the judicial role or the doctrine of harmonious constitution as well as colorable legislation are important for the general studies paper 2. That is where the relevance is. So that is how you have to use this particular article. Coming to the next article, tinkering for optics. Now the context here is with regards to the Fdi rule changes that the government has particularly brought about. You should know that Fdi is what is a major source of our economy. It is something that based on which our economy is earning a lot of forex, and all of this is what is important for the economy's general development also. So from that particular context, this article becomes important for the economy. So coming to the analysis, first and foremost, you should know about these policy reforms. Now basically There are three major reforms which have been taking place. The first is that there has been an extension of the already available 100% FDI that was under automatic route given to coal mining sector. Now this is what is also available to include those companies who are seeking to commercially sell the coal that is going to be mined in India. These are the changes that have been talked about. Another thing is that this will distinctly include contract manufacturing under the automatic 100% route, as well as the third change is that it will ease the local sourcing norms for overseas investors in single brand retail trading. So these are the basic three changes. One is with regards to the coal mining sector, the second is with regards to the manufacturing sector, and the third is with regards to the retail sector. So these are the changes that you should know about. Now the idea behind these changes is to create a job. All these three sectors are for job creation. Coal mining, manufacturing as well as retail will help in creating more jobs, and you all know by now that India is facing a severe crisis in vis-a-vis unemployment. The unemployment rate is what has been at a 45-year high. So this is a concern for the government, and that is why these reforms are what have come. So that is what has been discussed in the editorial. Some concerns are what have been highlighted. Now basically FDI was one of the major concerns for the government. Previously the FDI was what was $6.8 billion as has been talked about in the editorial, and this is what has now reduced further. This FDI previously was $7.9 billion, and this is what has reduced to $6.8 billion. This is the data that has been given. So this was one of the major concerns for the government. Also the goal of $5 trillion economy, for that India should be a $5 trillion economy till the year 2022. For that also it was important that FDI be strengthened in the country. More and more FDI is what is attracted, so that is important. Another analysis is the environmental analysis. Now the government has not given consideration to the environment. This is one sector that will suffer if coal is what is mined more. Coal is what will not be imported more from foreign countries, and it will be generated within India, and it will be used for thermal power plants. This is what is going to result in more and more carbon dioxide gas emissions. So this is an environmental hazard. That is what has been discussed. Another major issue that has been discussed here is with regards to the bureaucratic hurdles. Now the basic challenge for India is that despite the fact that the government has allowed these FDI reforms, that the issue is that at the ground level the companies often face tremendous bureaucratic hurdles, which results in these reforms not being translated into any particular major result, and that is what has to be altered here, and that is what has been discussed in the editorial. So this is the entire analysis vis-a-vis the FDI. Some questions on FDI are what you can expect under the economy section of general studies mains paper under paper 3. So that is where this article has relevance and it is important. Coming to the next article, what is the right way of regulating social media? Basically this is an interview. These kind of articles are best discussed when they are read yourself, but still I have tried to extract some important points which we could use in our answer. So the context here is with regards to the need for regulating social media. Previously also we have discussed articles on this where there were suggestions that probably social media accounts should be linked to Aadhaar. The issue is what is being examined by the Madras High Court, and that is why this is so much in news. So that is the entire context of this particular article. Now coming to the analysis, first and foremost you should know about the debate that is going on. Now the debate is that what is the balance between online privacy versus online regulation. Now there is no doubt that online privacy is what is required, but there is also a problem that a lot of fake news is what is being generated, and especially in a country like India that is so diverse, this news often results in lynching episodes, and that is why this is what is a major concern. Another issue is that social media is expanding in India at an unprecedented rate. Apps like WhatsApp are what are being used by even the common people in India, and this is something that is further going to expand. So that is one concern that the government is facing. So that is important. Another analysis or another discussion was with regards to fake news. Now basically fake news as a phenomenon is what is often linked to social media. But the editorial is bringing out a good analysis. It is saying that it is not something new. It is not that fake news is something that is a new development altogether with social media. This is age old. Since the time printing started, fake news or fake manipulation of facts is what is happening all throughout. Newspapers were accused of doing this in the past. Magazines were accused of doing this in the past. Often history books are known to have a particular view only. So all of this is what is nothing new, and that is why is it that the social media has been created a monster is being questioned in this particular editorial. Another thing is that it is being argued in the favor of all these companies, all the social media giants like WhatsApp and Facebook, that they are taking steps to control fake news. For instance, WhatsApp has recently made a limit on forwarding a particular message to maximum of 5 people. This is a step towards controlling fake news, and also this is what is not something that is there in India only. This is what is a global issue. For example, recently what had happened in Hong Kong, we have discussed about Hong Kong, the crisis that were going, the protests that were going on in Hong Kong, and how China was trying to oppress these protests. Now basically a news is what has come from Hong Kong itself, that it was China itself that was sponsoring fake news in Hong Kong. So this was what was a major cause of concern, and this is not something that is new to India. It is happening globally, is what has been analyzed. Another important aspect that has been discussed here is the geopolitical aspect of this. Now for instance, in this Hong Kong-China issue only, it is probably China who was accused here, and that is why China was what was highlighted. Why? Because all these companies, be it WhatsApp, be it Facebook, all of them have their centers in US, and US at present is at loggerheads with China. So it might happen that US might have prompted these companies to highlight this issue of China or the state-sponsored fake news, in particular in the case of China in this case. So that is something that is being discussed, that these geopolitics are being also played through social media. So that is important. Another analysis is with regards to a panacea for the regulation of social media. Here the editorial is discussing that it is believed that probably technology is the means to ensure that fake news is not spread. If we have some technological software which can detect fake news, which can shut such kind of accounts, probably it is believed that this will be a panacea, but this is not a panacea for this. Fake news is spreading because people are not regulating themselves. It is important that people have to show some self-regulation. If it is not for social media, it will be through some other means. So the fake news has to be stopped in some multiple steps have to be taken in this direction. Technology definitely is one of them, but not to be only panacea. So that is one analysis. Another idea that has been discussed here is the concept of data localization. This is a demand that India is asking for since a very, very long time, and this is again something that is important. As of now, all our data is what is stored in US, but India is demanding that this data is what should be stored locally. Otherwise, what happens is that with our data being stored in countries like the US, suppose in a district there is a risk of some particular riot, and there the administration wants to stop any spread of fake news or fake videos. In that scenario, what is the option with the administration? The administration has no access to the data that is being generated. So the only option that our administration is being left with is internet shutdown, and this is what is resorted to by them many, many times. If you ask officers of like deputy commissioners in a particular district, they will themselves admit that it might have happened that in vulnerable districts these kind of steps are what are taken very, very commonly. So this is one issue that India is discussing, that if there is data localization, then maybe such kind of a complete internet shutdown might not be required, and some other steps are what can be taken, but that is not the case anytime sooner. So that is what has been analyzed. Another thing that has been discussed is the need for a privacy law. I have discussed one full editorial on this. Definitely this is a remarkable judgment by the Supreme Court. It is a landmark judgment in the Puttaswamy case. But right to privacy, being a fundamental right, still there is no law on this, and no stringent law, and the government is not adhering to these the recommendations of the Supreme Court, and we have discussed this very much in detail, and this is what has also been discussed in this editorial. Now, what is the solution to this need for regulating the social media? There is one solution which has been suggested, that of a case of Telangana is what has been mentioned here. What has happened in Telangana is there is a special department, or a special cadre of officers is what is set up to only work on the fake news that is being generated. So what happens is that the administration has a keen eye. It will ensure that such kind of fake news are at least regulated or minimized, if not completely eliminated, and this is one model that other states can also adopt. So this is one solution that was offered. So this is what is the entire analysis that I could extract, but nevertheless this is an interview like editorial, and several more ideas are what are given. So if you are interested, I have provided the article. Try and read this particular article, it will help you. So that's about this particular article. The question for this particular article can come in General Studies paper 2, primarily because of the need for a privacy law. So that aspect makes it important there. Another thing that is important is in ethics paper, it can come as a free speech or rights of the citizen versus regulation by the government. These kind of questions are also famous in the ethics paper. So that is where you can find these kind of issues. The issue is also important from a social point of view, because lynching and fake news is what is the social issue it is targeting some particular community. So that is where you could use this article in General Studies paper 1 also. It has multiple usage, so the article can be used as fodder material in several papers of General Studies, so it's an important article. So that's about this particular article, and that's about our discussion today. I thank you all for watching the video.